Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Amanda González. I am really excited to be with you all virtually today. I first and foremost wanted to start by expressing that my hearts are with you all seniors who have had to sacrifice a lot of special moments during this unprecedented time in our nation. And I hope that pretty soon we can celebrate you all and all your tremendous hard work and accomplishments. But until then, I hope that y'all and your families stay safe and that y'all keep chugging on these last few weeks of virtual online class. But know that this too shall pass, and eventually y'all can start really focusing on the next chapter of your life. And that's precisely what I wanted to talk to y'all about today, civic engagement opportunities after high school. And I wanted to emphasize that, once you turn 18, one of the privileges that you have is the right to vote. And I want y'all to exercise that right and make sure that y'all know a little bit more about the ins and outs of the process from somebody who's been involved with it. So a little bit about me. I was a CSLAP participant as part of the very first cohort in 2013, and then I graduated following year from PSG North High School in 2014. Afterwards, I attended St. Edward's University, which is a smaller liberal arts university in Austin, and I graduated with a bachelor's degree in writing with a concentration in journalism and digital media and a minor in Spanish in 2018. One of the things that I am most grateful to the early college program for is the fact that I was able to stretch out my degree plan in a way that allowed for flexibility so that I can partake in internships, so that I could be a part of study abroad opportunities, so that I could have the time available to participate in volunteer programs and take elective courses. And the fact that I did have that flexibility from the early college program helped tremendously in shaping the amount of opportunities and programs that I was able to be involved with during my time in college. And one of the internships that was most rewarding was the opportunity to intern with our hometown state representative, Sergio Munoz Jr. And then I later interned with the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, which is all of the Texas House elected officials who have districts that are predominantly of Hispanic population. And so that was how I got my foot into the door of the world of politics. And after graduating from college, I started working at the Center for Public Policy Priorities, which is a think tank in Austin, and they focus on analyzing state legislation related to healthcare, education, job security, and food and nutrition programs. So I wanted to ask for all of y'all who are watching if you could reply with a follow-up email after this presentation and let me know a little bit about yourself. I want to know what you're considering studying and where you plan on attending college after you graduate from high school. And part of what I want you to understand from this presentation, and one of the main things I want to try to get across, is that regardless of what you decide to study, policies will impact your career. The Texas legislature has bills coming through on a wide range of topics, and these thousands of bills get trickled down into only a handful of bills. But regardless, all of these pieces of legislation are touching on topics related to medicine, whether you're studying to be an architect, whether you are studying to be an educator, whether you're involved in social work. Regardless of your major, I can guarantee you, if you look back to previous bills that have come up on the floor, there's something related to your major that affects the practice or the role that or responsibilities that you will be partaking on as you enter your career. And so I also wanted to provide a general college tip that it is perfectly fine to be undecided about your major when you enter college, and it is perfectly fine to switch your major throughout the time that you are in college. Focus on your passions, and like I said, having that wiggle room that the early college program allows for is a tool that you should utilize, and make sure to know that, you know, it's your career, it's your future that you are focusing on, and make sure that you end up studying something that is truly meaningful to you. So I just want first and foremost to emphasize that. Another thing that I wanted to do is try to show you policies that are relevant to your life now, currently, as a student attending a public high school in Texas. So the top 10% automatic admission rule started out as an idea that a Rio Grande Valley legislator had in the 1990s, and her name was Irma Rangel, and she got that idea written into legislation that then became a law. And so now big name flagship universities like UT Austin, Texas A&M, several other public universities in Texas have to abide by the top 10% automatic admission rule, which means that if you did your part, you kept your grades up, you worked hard to stay within the top 10% of your graduating class, you have automatic admission to these universities. And the reason why she did this is because she wanted to expand the opportunities for students in the Rio Grande Valley, and she has helped create a pathway for students from rural communities, students who are often underrepresented in higher education, to be able to access colleges that might otherwise have seemed impossible to attend. And since then, there have been amendments to the rule. UT now abides by a top 7% rule. But I just wanted to make the example that the top 10% rule applies to you, and policies are living, breathing things that can be amended session after session. And a law is not set in stone, but it takes a lot of power to make a change once a law is put into place. And other examples are the school dress code. Your local school board members and principals and other local leaders are the ones who get to determine the dress code that you have to abide by. So all of y'all might have like different dress codes in terms of, some of y'all might wear uniforms, some of y'all can't wear baseball caps, things like that. Those are all policies that your school board gets to determine for you. And minimum wage law, if you work a job after school that is hourly, the minimum amount that your employer can pay you is $7.25 in Texas. There's policies going on at the federal level to try to raise the wage. And a current one that is meaningful at the county-wide level is our current curfew that we have to abide by. Hidalgo County has instituted a 10 p.m. curfew, and certain cities are requiring that residents wear masks if they're going out in public. These are rules that the county has implemented as a way to combat the spread of COVID-19. And these are all examples of policies that matter right now to you all as students, and there are policies that can continue to breathe and change as time goes on. I was asking students to provide policy examples of things that are legal in few places, but not across the nation. And some of the examples that I received in the chat were legalization of marijuana. Other examples off the top of my head are gambling, lottery. Other states have certain restrictions on gun accessibility. Another really important example is online voter registration. The way that voting registration works in Texas is that you go to your county's website, you fill out a form online, you have to print that form, you have to physically sign it, and you have to mail it to your county to then be processed, and that is how you are registered to vote. Other states, you can sign an electronic signature and you're good to go. Voting rights and super fine details change across state to state. We also require as a state that residents be registered to vote a month in advance prior to election day. So these are all things to keep in mind. I know right now during COVID-19, we're not exactly sure when this will all be over. And if you are somebody who is going to be attending college out of the Rio Grande Valley, when you do finally move to your dorm or your apartment and you're getting settled, one of the things you need to do in your new city is register to vote with your county that you were living in at that time. For right now, if anyone wanted more specific detailed information about what you should do right now to make sure you can register to vote in November, if you're 18 years old, once you do turn 18 years old and you are a US citizen, make sure to register to vote with Hidalgo County for now, since all of y'all are here. And later on, you can re-register in your new county, but you want to at least be registered to vote for the upcoming presidential election and all of the state and local names on the ballot that will also be on the ballot. And at least for right now, while we do have this lockdown and we're all currently in a certain specific place, we want to try to register to vote at least where we currently live. So that's something to keep in mind. But this is an unprecedented time, and it's changing a lot of things in terms of there's talks and court battles going on right now about whether or not Texas will allow mail-in ballots. That's something that was only an option for people who had a disability or could prove that they were going to be out of the county on voting day, or if you were incarcerated. So people being concerned about not wanting to go to the polls and risk contracting COVID-19 are spurring up a movement to try to make sure that they have other options. So that's a current ongoing policies that we'll see what will happen. But there's elections that are being postponed and things that are changing rapidly in terms of voting rights. But I did want to spend a little bit of time to emphasize why it's important to register to vote in the county that you do live in, because it'll be that much easier for you to vote when all this is over and you can actually cast your ballot. So to kind of reinforce my point, I just wanted to kind of show you a timeline so that you can see the dates and how they correlate with voting. So the primary election had just happened, and it happened in March. And the Rio Grande Valley did have a runoff. So Senator Eddie Lucio Jr. and Sarah Stapleton Barrera are in a runoff for the Democratic Senate primary. That race was supposed to be determined in April, but it got pushed back to, I believe, July due to COVID-19 concerns. So that's a race that will come later, but I just wanted to highlight it because it's a local race that is relevant to our community. And then in October is the voter registration deadline for the November election. And so in November, that's when we'll elect we'll elect who our president will be for the next term. We will also re-elect our state officials, and there's several local elections that will be determined as well. This is also the first time that Texas first time in a long time that Texas will not allow straight ticket voting. You actually have to click which candidate you prefer for each race, as opposed to previously, if you wanted to vote all Republican or all Democrat, you could hit a button and it would check off red all the way down or blue all the way down. Now you actually have to go through and click each one. So just letting you know that this is probably going to be a voting cycle that will have longer waiting times than usual, and especially if COVID-19 rules are still in effect, where we have to stay 6 feet apart and there's no more than 10 people in a room. That'll limit how many voting machines can be in a room at one time. So just giving you all a heads up. I know this is probably going to be the first election y'all vote in, and y'all are in for a wild ride because there's a lot of unknowns that county officials are still trying to figure out how they are going to manage voting for the upcoming elections. Anyway, once we have our ballots in and we know who has been formally elected, the state-wide elected officials will begin the Texas legislative session. And Texas has their legislative session happen every other year. It happens on odd numbered years, and so it will start in January, and it'll happen for 140 days, so about till the end of May. And during this time, that is when all these elected officials will be receiving legislation and working them through the legislative process. And I wanted to also add a fun fact that I learned from a Capitol tour guide when I was interning at the Capitol, that the reason why we have our state legislature meet every other year is because way back in the day when elected officials had to take a horse-drawn carriage to get to the Capitol, they did not want to have to travel days at a time from El Paso, from Lubbock, from the Rio Grande Valley to get to Austin. They only wanted to make that trip every other year because it was, well, not the easiest thing to do by horse. So that is why we still carry on the tradition of meeting every other year. Some states meet every year. Some meet for a longer period of time. Some meet for a shorter period of time. But it's a lot of work that elected officials have to do in 140 days. And at the end of those days, the thousands of bills that come in will be weeded down to generally only about a few hundred. And those bills will then have the opportunity to be passed into law, or the governor can decide to veto those bills. And I also wanted to add a caveat that if the governor is not satisfied with the quality of work of our elected officials after those 140 days, he can, or she, in this case, Governor Abbott is male, but they can implement a 30-day special legislative session where they will focus on high priority items that the governor wants the legislators to focus on. And that's not typically a move that is done often because it is a cost to Texas taxpayers to fund. And so if the governor is going to make that call, it has to be for a really good reason. But generally, 140 days, that's the time we get. And if not, usually over the summer, if anything, that's when there will be a special session focusing on specific policies. So just a review of the political hierarchy. The president, the Supreme Court, the U.S. Congress and Senate, that is the top of our government. 3 branches that focus on the legislative responsibilities, executive responsibilities, and judicial responsibilities. And all the way down, these levels are represented lower and lower. So the Texas House of Representatives, that is where I was an intern. This is my area of expertise where I've been involved in. But I wanted to emphasize that the further down this chart you get, so to county commissioners, city council members, that is the closer you are to representing the people themselves. So there's a saying in politics that change starts locally. If you want something addressed in your community, the best way to go about it is to have your locally elected leaders, which are your mayor, your city council members, try to tackle that issue. This isn't arranged in a pyramid for a reason. The power flows between all of the levels, and they all work with each other. Our mayor and city officials work with our county officials. Our county officials work with our state officials. State officials also work with our city level. It is a wide web of resources and people that are involved in trying to do what's best for our communities. So the next thing that I wanted to highlight is how the Texas legislature is divided. So if you think of the shape of Texas as being one big puzzle, and you think of the Senate as the puzzle pieces, there's 31 puzzle pieces, and you can see how they're outlined in the different colors on this map. And all of these senators come from different backgrounds. Some of them are small business owners, some of them are farmers, a good chunk of them are lawyers. And these senators are under the direction of the lieutenant governor. And part of his responsibility is to divide these politicians into committees that best fit their background primarily. There's also a lot of politics that go into who's on which committee, and seniority factors in as well. But generally, the concept is that those who have a farming background will likely be on the agriculture committee. Those who have a medical background will be on the health committee. Those who have been involved with sitting on a school board at one point in their earlier career will be involved on the education committee. That's generally the concept. There are several committees, and so if I have a idea that I want to translate into a piece of legislation that is going to make its way through the legislative process, the first step is for that bill to be introduced to the committee relevant to that idea. So if it's an education bill, it'll go to the Public Education Committee, and these senators will hear that bill. If it passes the committee, it'll go to the House. Now the House also has the same capability to create an idea, have it be put into legislation, and if it passes through the relevant committee, then it'll get sent to the Senate. The difference primarily in how the House operates is there are 150 members. So when you think of Texas as a big puzzle, it's divided into 150 pieces. So there are about 4 to 5 reps per senator. The main presiding officer is the Speaker of the House. Likewise, his job, or her, is to divide the members into corresponding committees, and they listen to relevant pieces of legislation that their colleagues have passed or that their Senate colleagues have passed. And once it goes through committee, then it'll go to the floor of the chamber that introduced the legislation. So as a reminder or a refresher, I wanted to show you all the legendary I'm Just a Bill Schoolhouse Rock video. But I wanted to preface it with a policy idea that is relevant to our age group, and it started as an idea. So in the 1980s, concerned parents wanted to change the legal drinking age from 18 to 21. And that required a lot of legislative hearings, and it was something that didn't happen overnight, but ultimately it did pass. And that's the current law of the land. 21 is the legal drinking age. So as you're watching the bill, think of that concept of the legal drinking age changing.
Whew, you sure gotta climb a lot of steps to get to this Capitol building here in Washington. Well, I wonder who that sad little scrap of paper is.
I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. Well, it's a long, long journey to the capital city. It's a long, long wait while I'm sitting in committee. But I know I'll be a law someday. At least I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill.
Gee, Bill, you certainly have a lot of patience and courage.
Well, I got this far. When I started, I wasn't even a bill. I was just an idea. Some folks back home decided they wanted a law passed, so they called their local congressman, and he said, "You're right, there ought to be a law." And he sat down and wrote me out and introduced me to Congress, and I became a bill. And I'll remain a bill until they decide to make me a law. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And I got as far as Capitol Hill. Well, now I'm stuck in committee, and I'll sit here and wait while a few key congressmen discuss and debate whether they should let me be a law. I hope and pray that they will. But today I'm still just a bill.
Listen to those congressmen arguing. Is all that discussion and debate about you?
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones. Most bills never even get this far. I hope they decide to report on me favorably, otherwise I may die.
Die?
Yeah, die in committee. Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live. Now I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House where I'll wait in a line with a lot of other bills for the president to sign. And if he signs me, then I'll be a law. How I hope and pray that he will. But today I am still just a bill.
You mean even if the whole Congress says you should be a law, the president can still say no?
Yes, that's called a veto. If the president vetoes me, I have to go back to Congress and they vote on me again, and by that time you're so
By
old.
that time, it's very unlikely that you become a law. It's not easy to become a law, is it?
No, but how I hope and pray that I will. But today I am still just a bill. He signed your bill. Now you're a law. Oh, yes.
So, glad y'all got to watch that video. If you are inspired to try to have an idea become a piece of legislation that will eventually become a law, the best way to start is to have a meeting with staff or the elected official themselves to discuss the policy that you would like to see changed, and make sure to be brief and clear and credible when you're speaking to these people, and be respectful of their time, but also know that their job primarily is to serve our communities. So if it's something that you know is really valuable, do all that you can to make sure you walk in there with the best case for why this is important. And it's always a courtesy to schedule visits ahead of time. It's not always possible that you'll be able to sit down with the elected official themselves, but just know that staff are truly an extension of the member, and it is their job to be just as responsive, if not more, to the community's needs. So please be open to meeting with staff as well. It takes a lot of work to make sure that that bill gets through the legislative process, and staff are a big part of why that happens. And so if your idea does garner traction and it is moving through the process, something that is extremely encouraged of you to do is to participate in the legislative process. When a bill is in committee, there is room available for stakeholders to provide feedback as to why they support this, why they oppose this. And elected officials like to hear from people in their communities. If there is a bill that you read about online or you see a news clip about, and it's a bill that you want to testify for or against, if you make the trip to the Capitol to do this, I guarantee you your elected officials and staff will take note of the fact that they have a constituent speaking on that bill. And if you do have the idea, start moving, definitely be involved in participating in the legislative process by testifying and advocating on social media and whatnot. I wanted to also provide an example of a real life policy that I have been working on closely with my organization. So to give you a little bit of background on it, 4.3 million Texas workers, or about 40% of the Texas workforce, lack access to paid sick days. So that means generally let's use the scenario of if a single mother is sick, or if her child is sick and she has to miss work to take this child to the doctor or to care for this child at home, they won't be receiving payment for that day. They have no excused absences they can use. And 3 days generally of lost pay equals about a monthly grocery budget for the average worker. So when you're thinking about the fact that most of the people in jobs that lack paid sick days are service industry workers who generally get paid less and have less benefits, that's a tremendous inequity that my organization has identified as a key way to help secure economic opportunity for Texans, and that's a strong reason as to why I've been advocating for paid sick days. So to equate that to a school setting, that would be the equivalent of if you miss school to go to the doctor, you're not allowed to make up work for that day. You automatically get a 0 in the book. You aren't able to participate in sports or activities that you would have been because you were absent that day, and there's no ands, ifs, or buts about it. It's a 0 in the grade book. That's the equivalent to not having paid sick days in the school world, not having paid sick days in the adult world means you might not have money to purchase food, to have food be on the table. So what we have done at my organization at CPPP is helped conduct research on why paid sick days are beneficial and how many Texans lack access to them, and provide policy recommendations for the state and local leaders to implement regarding paid sick days. And so at the local level, we had our city officials in Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas pass paid sick leave ordinances requiring businesses that have 50 plus more employees have access to paid sick days. And so it's somewhere between the range of 3 to 7 days, depends on the city and depends on the type of job and how many hours you put into the job altogether. If you're working full-time or part-time, there's caveats to the whole thing, but generally we were able to pass this at the local level in 3 different cities. But the state tried to block or preempt these local ordinances from occurring, and the state was coming at it very much from a business-centric point of view. But ultimately, we were able to help defend our local paid sick leave ordinances, and they are still having court battles about them, but they're alive, and the state was not able to prevent them to preempt paid sick days. And so what I specifically do at my organization is I help handle all of the social media for my organization. And as an organization, we contracted a polling company to call people all over Texas, and we gave them bare bones basic of what paid sick days are and asked them by the end of the conversation, do you think they should be implemented or not? And we found that 74% of Texans agree that allowing paid sick leave requirements is beneficial for Texas. And that was polling data that we presented at the state level. So just wanted to give a real life example of something that me and my colleagues work on at CPPP. Now, I wanted to ask that you all practice policy advocacy using your digital tools. So if you would use the hashtag CSLAP votes to compose a tweet about a policy area that you're passionate about, or a policy change that would make a difference in your life, go ahead and do so. And make sure to use the hashtag. And what I will do is I'll monitor these tweets and will reply to them. And I will list committees at the state level that focus on relevant legislation for that area. And I will also point you towards organizations that focus on that policy area. If you would like to get involved with those organizations, that's a way for you to get involved. So if y'all would please do me the favor of making these tweets, that's my way that I can help connect with y'all and help y'all kind of get your foot in the door of civic engagement. That would be really great to kind of learn a little bit more about what policy issues are relevant to you and your community, and that you will be monitoring as an informed voter. So I encourage you to make sure to send your tweets, and if you have any specific questions, like I said earlier, feel free to email me and let me know a little bit about you, what you're thinking of studying, and you can mention areas of policies that are important to you. Aside from my politics background, I also wanted to provide some more general college advice for y'all. And I wanted to emphasize that I'm here as a mentor for you all, regardless of if it has nothing to do with politics or not. So some general college advice for y'all is to build your resume. Don't just focus on your GPA. Make sure that you are getting the most out of college by being involved in student organizations. Like I said, I wrote for the school newspaper during the time that I was in college, and it was a great way for me to learn about different things that are going on campus. And I was able to participate in several community service projects. And what's unique about several of these campuses' community service projects is that they allow you to travel to new places. So while I was in Austin, we got to help clean at a state park. Similarly, I know organizations here in the Rio Grande Valley help with cleaning up the Santa Ana Wildlife Refuge. Things like that are some of the examples of community service projects you can be a part of in college. And a few other things I would like to emphasize are to prioritize self-branding and making connections. And so what I mean by self-branding is make sure that you promote what you learned from a guest speaker. Make sure that when somebody comes to speak to your class, if you were really engaged in what they had to say, make sure to shake their hand afterwards and say, hey, thank you. I really appreciated hearing from you on topic XYZ. Is it okay if I follow you on LinkedIn afterwards? Make sure to form those connections and continue to highlight things that are important to you. So if you participate in a community service project that really shaped the way you think of something, you should write about that or share that in a way that is reflective of your values and who you are as a person. And I like to take a lot of pictures. It's a big part of who I am, but I have tailored in on using my digital media skills to create my own website. And so I have all of my photography and journalism articles and blogs available. And I very much try to keep a very professional persona on social media as well. I think that's something that is very important. And if you need to have some sort of separation and you want to have a Finsta and have a real professional account, you can do that, but just know that everything you post can be tied to you in some way. So that's something for you to think about, especially if you're interested in maybe running for office one day. Know that people will scour through all your tweets and your TikToks and things just looking for an excuse to try to tear you down. So don't give them any reason to do that. So definitely make sure to prioritize self-branding in a positive light and to form connections, because a lot of the times the people that you meet in college will know somebody who can help you get to the next place. And I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for you to stand out and ask questions and go up and shake people's hands, or go the extra mile to write a thank you card for a professor who really opened your mind. Things like that don't go unnoticed, and they are certainly appreciated and will help you in the long run. And lastly, I just really wanted to emphasize to use your early college credits to your advantage. You don't have to rush through college and have it be gone in 2 years and have it be gone in a blink of an eye. You can use your time to maybe take 12 to 15 college hours as opposed to 18 hours to just try to finish really quick. You can have a little bit of wiggle room if you want to double major and extend your college opportunities. You have a little bit more breathing room to do that and won't likely have to stay in college past 4 years because of the fact that you did have a head start with these early college credits. So take advantage of the fact that you have time management skills that you've been working on, and know that in college you are going to have more hours in the day to do things. So use your time wisely. You're not going to be in class from 8 to 4 p.m. every single day of the week. You are going to have classes maybe a few days of the week, or maybe all in the mornings or all in the afternoons. But make sure to utilize your time in a way that maximizes the opportunities you will have for after you graduate from college. And so lastly, I just wanted to emphasize that y'all can stay in touch with me, and I wanted to provide some links that are available for you to figure out who your state rep is, whether you're staying in the Rio Grande Valley or if you're moving to a different part of Texas. Find my rep. This specific link is relevant for finding your Texas rep. If you're moving out of state, there's also ways for you to find who your new rep will be in the state that you will be in. And voting registration information, I put the general Texas one, but county by county is the best way to go. So make sure to look up Hidalgo County, Travis County, Bexar County, wherever it is that you'll be. And I also included a nonpartisan political quiz. So it'll help you figure out the political ideology that best aligns with your values. And I just wanted to formally end in saying that CSLAP has amazing resources, and they will continue to help you throughout your time in college by assisting with resume reviews, mentorship opportunities, and we can help you with searching for scholarships. And I wanted to thank you very much for joining in, and I wish you all the very best in your college endeavors, and know that you're more than welcome to follow me on socials and connect with me and ask any follow-up questions you may have. If there's anything I can do to help you all, IGB always looks out for each other, and we will definitely be in touch, and I look forward to seeing everything that y'all will do in the future. Thank you so much.